All right, let's play the good news, bad news game. Which one should I start with? You all already know them. The good news is that Real Madrid is going to buy back Nico Paz from Como for 9 million euros and has already informed the Italian team. And the bad news is that once he's bought back for that amount, 9 million always, according to Fabrizio Romano, and no one has denied this, and I am, unless, and we'll talk about that at the end, he does a preseason with Mourinho and convinces the Portuguese coach enough for him to say, this guy stays here with me. Well, Madrid would look for a way to either sell him to them for 60 million, giving preference to the Italian club, or if there's another. And he has a lot of suitors, a lot of people interested. Nico Paz. In Italy or in England, if they offered 70, well, if in the end there was a bidding war, 70, 80, and they could take him, which would be a good deal for Real Madrid because, hey, you're selling a kid from the youth academy for 70, 80 million. The same thing happened. I don't know for how much. He was sold to Graf Hakimi, but they made a good deal with him. But of course, there he is, in the two-time European champion of the last 2 years at PSG. And how well Graf Hakimi would have suited us at Real Madrid, a homegrown player. Well, something very similar could happen with Nico Paz. It would be a business move, but I know that maybe not for everyone. Let me know in the comments. For many Real Madrid fans, this would be quite disappointing. I've seen the player, though I haven't watched all his matches in full. But we always come back to the topic of highlights, which are highlights can be misleading sometimes. But I've always seen it in this kid, even in that season when he scored that goal in the Champions League against Napoli with Real Madrid. I always saw that this guy had what it takes to be a Real Madrid player. And if we end up selling him, the message to the youth academy is not even this guy who went to Como and if he made it because he has proven to be a great footballer, one of the most promising young players in Europe. Not even with him, not even he can stay. And what Madrid is going to do with you, except for very rare exceptions, basically 1 out of every 10 is, okay, you stand out, we sell you. And that would be very worrying. Beyond the business side, I insist. And that's what people are saying now could happen. But there's a small ray of hope there, which is that, and we'll see if it happens, he could return to Real Madrid, do the preseason with Mourinho, and he could say he stays. But always according to Mourinho's judgment. I trust that Mourinho is a guy who has, for the players, mind you, for others, maybe not, but I think for most, yes, a keen eye. Modric, Di Maria, there are a lot of players. I believe that. And that this guy, when he arrives this summer, if they give him that little bit of time to show Don Jose that he can stay there, he takes advantage of it and does it. I want to see a midfield with Nico Nicopa. I'm not going to get carried away, not so much as to say, well, to give him that status of an indispensable footballer, which could be someone who has proven himself much more in elite football, like a Vitinha or I was going to mention Joao Neves, who is also young and a double European champion with Paris Saint-Germain. Some players have proven themselves more. And Nico Nicopa, even though he played very well at Como, it's clear that it's like a second tier in Europe. Because also this year they're going to play their first champions, their first participation in the Champions League. I mean, it's still commendable, right? But anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think about the topic. Speaking of Mourinho, he gave an interview here. I have to say no, that I don't know to whom I don't know. Besides, hey, you have Mourinho, man. You have Mourinho here, and you put him here with some Coca-Colas, with some seats in the back. I mean, I don't know. No, I don't think that's the way to interview Mourinho. But hey, since weird things are in style now, well, okay, fine. But come on, you have Don Jose Mourinho, man, the new coach of Real Madrid, and you have him like this. But well, I ask those of you who always go for the pocket version, just listening to the videos and not watching them, to open the screen and watch most statements here, because it's in English that I think is understandable. But someone always writes to me like, "Why do you think we all understand English?" Well, here you have the subtitles, and I think they are clear. Let's listen to what Mourinho says about the group, about the locker room. I mean, what he understands about locker rooms, or about the locker rooms he works in. You've managed. We go.
Like you've managed so many personalities: Cristiano, Ronaldo's, Drogba's, Terry, Ozil, Ibrahimovic. What's the secret of managing elite players and personalities? What's the mouth? Ronaldo's, the Drogba's, Terry, Ozil, Ibrahimovic. What's the secret to managing players and personalities? To listening.
I think it's the best problem a coach can have, to have the best guys.
It's what we always say, the so-called blessed problem. By the way, is Beast Mode on podcast the name of this channel, or the podcast they do? And is it good? It has enough pull to have Mo as a guest there.
Best players mode is the best problem that a coach can have. We shouldn't be speaking about Real Madrid, but I can just touch on a little point. I read a few things where people were saying that Irene is coming here and is going to cut some of the top players that supposedly had some problems during the season. No, I want these players, son.
Some very interesting statements. I think this belongs to golpunto.com. No, these are some very interesting statements, because they are saying something that has been talked about a lot during these last months about Mourinho coming here to bring order to the locker room. I'm sure he'll do it, but we need to see how. He's repeating what's already been said, that he won't cut off anyone's head and so on. And he says no, that he wants them. They're footballers, so we're at that point where he wants them to stay, because he wants to convince them. He doesn't want to kick them out. He wants to convince them, which I like to hear. Yeah.
I want these players. I want the best players. Now I have to find a way to have a team and not to have problems like eventually, I don't know. I'm just reading that they had in previous season, but the best players are the players that you want. If you have problems with very good players, that is a big problem. It makes sense. That is a big problem. It makes sense. But the big players are the big players.
Yes, what he says is very true, that if the footballers who aren't that good have problems, then you have the bigger problem, right? But if these players are good, is he talking about that? Is he trusting his man management and in what happened before being there? He's paying attention because he has reports, because he's seen what has happened, but he wants to handle it firsthand and by being there. Look, this is a different Mourinho than the one we knew back in the day. It's a different Mourinho. Anyway, I recommend you watch that documentary about Mourinho at Tottenham on Prime Video. That also really changed my perspective on him. He's a guy who talks, who communicates, who wants them on his side. Whoever he sees isn't on board, he tries to convince. And if he can't convince him, then it's a lost cause. But it's a different way from how they've always portrayed Mourinho to us. That's why I say that documentary. The one about Tottenham, it's called Impossible is Nothing, I think. I don't remember exactly. Well, they made several, right? Manchester City and so on, and one about Tottenham with Mourinho. Really good, honestly, really good. So, hey, let's see what happens. Honestly, I like it. How is that landing at Madrid? Well, thanks to this podcast, great interview for sure. Who would have thought? No, who would have thought? But Vinicius was very good. Yesterday, I didn't have time to make this video about it. Vinicius scored two other goals, but a controversial third one was taken away from him. Now, I'll give you my opinion. And Vinicius, who is becoming one of the stars of the World Cup, this is the World Cup of names like Haaland, Mbappe, Messi, then Cristiano showed up. And people don't talk much about Vinicius. Not much is said because, well, we already know that Vinicius is a very powerful figure in the media. But we saw it when they didn't give him the Ballon d'Or, and so on. There are campaigns against Vini, against Vinicius. There always have been. And, I don't agree with everything Vinicius does, but I do agree with most things. Because besides being a Real Madrid player, he's been decisive in recent years with goals in finals and so on. He seems like a good kid to me, but there are things I dislike because he's often been badly advised. It's no longer his problem, but an issue with those around him. Even if he lets himself be badly advised, that's just my opinion. But anyway, you know I want the best for Vinicius. How could I not? If it were any other way, as a Real Madrid player, as a player for Brazil, just like the rest of the players who play, I don't really care much about other national teams besides Spain, but I still want them to do well. And yesterday with Brazil, well, he scored two. He scored two good goals. The header, he's where he needs to be for the first one, taking advantage of a mistake and then takes advantage of another mistake. And that's what happens. Guys, what I see here is something that in my football, before this would never be a foul, but in modern football with VAR, when this happens, it usually gets disallowed. This usually gets disallowed. The question is, would they have disallowed it for Messi? I don't think so. They don't disallow it for Messi. But I'm convinced. Among other things, because we've seen this. I mean, we've seen that this happens. Even though at the time it was a foul, it wasn't a yellow card. And not just with Messi, we've seen that this wasn't a foul before Argentina's first goal the other day. And even though the image is very blurry, remember the play, it was a foul and they didn't disallow it. And of course, depending on the frame you use, it didn't seem like it. And actually, in the play, in the continuous image, you can't see a foul. It's a classic football play. The Scottish player doesn't even complain. But it's true that if you look closely at this play, well, man, there's a touch from Vinicius that gets him. And that's why I always have to be consistent. These kinds of plays, I've always said the same thing all year, ever since that play with Vinicius and Lamine Yamal. It's wrong ever since that day. And it's happened a lot of times since then. If you stick your foot out in front of a guy, even if you barely touch him, you bother him, you interrupt his passing motion or his shooting motion, the way he moves with the ball at his feet, because it's not the same to run without the ball at your feet as it is to run with the ball at your feet. Those who have played soccer, those of us who have played soccer, we know that, right? Just by touching him a little, man, and here he touches him a little. Look at the foot down here. Look at the foot. He wants to keep moving forward and wants to touch the ball, but he ends up doing it poorly because Vinicius touches him a bit. I'll say two things. In this modern soccer, that's a foul. And if you're going to review it, you see it, you have to call it. But come on, would you call that on someone like Messi? This, even though they later say we're obsessed or whatever, it's not that. We see it. It's just how it is. We see it in every World Cup match. They don't call this on him. Damn, because Vinicius would have gotten a hat trick with Brazil, which no Brazilian player has done in a World Cup match since Pelé. It would have been historic then. He would have reached 5 goals in this World Cup, tying Messi, and in the end, Ancelotti got really mad, telling the referee, come on, disallow it now, disallow it now. And he told her, look here, I got this from Coto Matamoros, who says it's legendary. In the analysis by Cermeño from Maldini's channel, I put it here in small because I think Maldini asks for rights and stuff, and then they demonetized you. The channel, if you put this, the video, if you make it too big, not from his video. As Don Amancio says here, because Maldini is going to say he didn't finish the season well, says Don Amancio. But how did I lose? The duel at the end of the season, Vinicius ended up being the second top scorer in Europe in the last 5 months of the season, right? Because that was the explanation, roughly speaking. Vinicius has won 3 MVPs, man of the match, in all 3 of Brazil's matches. With those 4 goals that could have been 5, Maldini said this before the World Cup. Let me check if I have the volume now.
In the video about Vinicius, why do I think Vinicius is going to disappoint? Because I think the end of the season hasn't been good, and no.
I have to keep pausing it for you because with this little music, then they tell you about copyright and all that. So the end of the season for Vinicius hasn't been good. This is the guy who watches all the games, and the one who doesn't, it's clear he doesn't handle the data he should, as Don Amancio said here.
I don't really believe in Brazil, so since I don't...
And even though he doesn't really believe in Brazil, I have to say that I don't either. I have a lot of hope in Brazil. But man, at least Brazil could be among the 6 or 7 candidates for the title. No matter how bad we think they are, because of course we judge them against the great Brazil of the past.
Right? In this current Brazilian team, I don't really believe in Vinicius for this World Cup.
Well, that's it. I'm not going to play it anymore because I insist. I don't want to complicate my life with this whole thing about the music and the copyright, but he nailed it for Vinicius' first 3 games. He really nailed it. Let me show you this, which I was going to mention to you. In the last video, I told you, hey, there's this thing about Cristiano that's been going around about when they asked Cristiano about Messi. He said that he didn't want to answer, as always, as always. The fact of choosing just one part and only one part of reality deceives all of us, even me, and I was there. I wasn't in the mix zone to listen to Cristiano. I was at the stadium, but then I had to deal with this. I had to deal with this. That they had asked him about Messi and he didn't want to answer. The reality is this. They ask him about Messi several times. He answers all of them. And on the third or fourth time, he says, that's enough. Stop asking me about Messi all the time.
I can say it was a very, very tough week, a difficult week, a week where public opinion was very harsh with us, all the players, especially for me, for the coach. But if it's always like this, it's no big deal because, as you can imagine, it's already been 23 years in this profession. When things go well, Cristiano is praised, but when they go badly, it's always the same story. He's old. It'll always be this way.
Messi appeared, Mbappe appeared, Haaland appeared, and as you said, Cristiano was missing.
They already say Messi appears, Mbappe appears, Haaland appears. They don't mention Vinicius, by the way, because of what we said before, right? And here he's going to answer calmly. They mention Messi's name.
Today, Cristiano showed that he arrived. He came to Portugal, and Cristiano arrived today.
I always arrive sooner or later.
He says, I was always here sooner or later, but I was always here.
Bruno Ronaldo versus Lionel Messi to close out the spectacular career.
He's already starting to make a face like, hey, you don't ask Messi so much about Cristiano because you always ask me about Messi. And here they only ask him about Messi. You'll see how he's going to steer the topic to whether they'll meet at some point during the World Cup, which for me, and now Cristiano is going to say it's not a question, that it's a weird question. For me, it's still a relevant question because it's true that it's a rivalry everyone is waiting for, right?
I want to ask both of you about the possibility of this great match, if it could happen, if you'd like it, and congratulate you on this game and your impressive careers.
Well, I don't really know how to answer you because it's a question that doesn't make much sense, but okay.
Here, I think Cristiano is wrong, right? He says the question doesn't make sense, but I think it does, especially from an Argentine journalist. It's a great match and he gets compliments. It's not that bad, but he answers anyway.
It would be great, but the most important thing right now was to win to advance in the group.
Being here, it would be great, but the most important thing today was to win and all that.
What have you seen through my eyes? Let's go.
Come on, come on.
Yesterday, Messi scored 2 goals. Mbappe comes out, or maybe he doesn't.
Of course, listen, here we go again with Messi scoring 2 goals. It's true that then they talk about Mbappe and all that, but man, he must get tired of it too because they don't ask the other guy about Cristiano, right? And now for the third question, I've already answered the first 2 guys, that's it. So what they've told us is just part of the reality. Just take that and that's fine. They asked me about Messi once and the guy shuts the journalist up. No. It was the 3rd time they asked him. He had already answered. Well, guys, that's it. 20 minutes of video. I try to include here everything I'm leaving out because it gets difficult. Keeping up with 3 videos a day is tough. Sometimes even 2 or just 1 is hard. Because of what I told you, aside from the logistics we have here, like working on television and all that, it gets complicated. But just so you know, I'm going to be here. I'm still here every day, and there's more to come. More surprises and interesting things I'll record soon related to the World Cup and upcoming reveals, Real Madrid. As always, a lot is happening. Please like the video because it really helps the channel. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, comment, and share. See you in the next one. Bye.